नहीं नहीं, आप बिल्कुल इसके उपरांत बिल्कुल आप सो जाइए and please take rest. Namaskar. So nice of you to join us at
No, it's rather important that we have this discussion.
we really appreciate this.
Thank you
From
so
the
much.
bottom of our heart
Thank
and from all of us. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you, Tamo, Hemochandra ji and Rami ji. And just to give a context to the conversation, Rami ji just landed today morning. She was overseas and she was kind enough to accommodate this request from our side. And our much appreciation and thank you to Tamo as well for making time in his busy schedule today. So welcome everyone to today's Twitter space, Manipur Crisis, the Future of Manipur, hosted by the Meitei Heritage Society in collaboration with MMAB Bangalore. Just to give a very, very brief context, and I don't want to take much time on that, it has been over 45 days now since the violence in Manipur started. Since then, there has been multiple developments, including the visit by the Honorable Home Minister Sri Amit Shahs on his 3-day trip to Manipur. Subsequent to that, he has had multiple engagement meetings with different stakeholders across political parties, CSOs, academicians, and all the relevant stakeholders. Unfortunately, even as we speak today, there are reports of violence going on in our home state, and therefore we have requested the time of Sri Hemochandra ji and Rami ji to share the perspective and to guide us how do we take this forward, what is the way forward, what are the steps that needs to be taken, and we would love to hear from both of you. Tamo, I would like to begin with you first, because you being from the political fraternity, one of the biggest concerns that we have been having. Tamo, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you very clearly.
Right. So, Tamo, the first question that I have for you is that one of the concerns that we have been having is that despite the huge presence of military forces, including those with the Manipur local police, IRB, so on and so forth, Manipur is a very small state. Why is it that the government, both central and state government, is unable to prevent this violence? At the end of the day, if the government of India is able to stem the violence in many other bigger states, for example, J&K after the revocation of Article 370, I wanted to understand from you why is the violence in Manipur and what should we do, and particularly from the political fraternity, what in your mind should be done to ensure that the violence stops at the first place?
Nongren, can I come in now? I think since you've
Yeah. The
put
question was
your
to you,
question
Tamo.
very lucidly and very clearly, and I think in all fairness of compassion, I think you've been very kind to Ramiji also, because I think she requires a little rest, and I think uh, it would have been a little unfair if you had asked her to speak before me, because it will give her at least a few minutes to recuperate from her jet lag. And thanks a lot for having me on your space. See, I have spoken not on too many platforms, and if you had, I'm sure you would have followed a couple of, platforms where I have spoken before, and even before coming to your question, which I will tackle in a very easy manner, which probably will be good for common understanding. And of course Ramiji, and of course many more people. I will not like to take names, because Ramiji is there on our show, and of course a lot of people cutting across both the Kuki community, the Meitei community, academics, politicians have spoken on this issue. And my only fervent, I think, request is that this narrative has not changed in the last 46 days. And I will request your platform, the Meitei Heritage Society, which has done, a very commendable job in putting things in the right perspective. But also, I must caution you that we must not fall into this trap of the blame game, which is still not ending. And after I did a show with Karan Thapar ji, a lot of requests came, a lot of people wanted to speak to me, but I have put it on hold. In the first place, it was only right to wait for the time the home minister said, that was 15 days. And in all fairness of things, what has been happening has been a slugging match, and it has not ended. And thanks to, I mean, I'm not saying this because Ramiji is on the show. I think we need the voices of people like Rami Desai ji, because she has absolutely remained as a very neutral voice, putting things in the right perspective, and that is for people to judge. It is for the whole country to judge. And I'm not saying this, please don't take it as a very Maitai view or whatever people sort of, want to paint it these days, because I think there has been a totally, one sided narrative which has been going on in the national mainstream media as well. And of course, I do not like to mention personal things on shows like this or talks like this on platforms like this. But after I had more or less after a long stint, political career, which probably in our community they know of me, but I had taken a little bit of a sabbatical, and I was slightly in the shadows, as to say it. But when I was looking at every voice being coming out after the May 3, sad incident, it became a total, one-sided narrative where the Meitei community as a whole started being demonized. We started, getting blamed for everything. We were also sort of painted as the aggressors, people who are doing this pogrom and all kinds of things. So, and at the same time, of course, whatever has happened was very sad, and I'm not even going into it. And I think to put a thing in perspective, when Mr. Karan Thapar approached me, my only take on him was that, Mr. Thapar, I am not there to come and slug it out and put the blame game as what you are doing, because all you media guys, whether it is Karan Thapar or name it, anybody, they are just not interested in looking forward for positive, narratives or solutions or good, good things. They just want us to just do a boxing kind of match and slug it out, and and even those things which probably is best kept, subdued, are being, taken out from wherever, from the archives, and put it out in public display all the time. Very recently, very recently, two ladies, one from the Kuki community and one from the Meitei community, were sort of interviewed. And this whole narrative about being a Meitei and a Kuki is also very harmful. And I think we should refrain from this. And this is my fervent appeal through the platform of the Meitei Heritage Society, that let us first forget this Kuki Meitei narrative in the first place. And secondly, what I feel today is that, as I've always reiterated, I mean, if you had gone into the platforms where I've spoken, and I've only spoken three times, one at the Rajdeep Desai show, and then with Vikram Chandra and Karan Thapar. And at the very first show, I described myself as an ardent follower and I personal admirer of Shri Narendra Modi ji. And this is a very huge statement coming from a Congress person like me. I'm from the Congress party, and technically I still have a Congress, I mean, position. But my personal adulation, my personal respect for the Prime Minister, who in the recent memory and consciousness has done so much for the Northeast and particularly for Manipur. And one thing which touched my heart was, I mentioned it, if you had gone very carefully with my interview, I said when he put the Lengyan fee, that Lairum fee, that Meitei, that Gamcha, and the headgear, Angavastra, and he took the dip in the holy Sangam at the confluence of the Ganga, Saraswati, and the Jamuna at the Sangam, which is so dear to all of us. In the sense, in at least more to do with the Vaishnav, Hindu, community which we have, it swelled me with pride. I almost forgot that I was a Congress guy. I forgot politics. And I felt, my God, I mean, this is so good. There is peace in the state. Mr. Biren Singh also, the Honorable Chief Minister, although we have political differences, had brought the state into some form of peace. There was, as Rami Desai ji, if you ever go into Rami Desai ji's show, it's Actually, my loss, I have not followed Rami Desai ji very much, but after I started coming into the this Twitter space or whatever, the media and all that, I started listening to people like them. Actually, and my loss, am I becoming a little sort of out of this thing context?
Yes, yes,
After
Tamo, yeah,
I started coming into
sure,
the
please, yeah, if you can,
yeah, yeah. I'll come
yeah.
back to the context. Yeah, let me come back, and then you interject me in between also, because I may have got a little emotional on this. But when I said these things, I also said that because it is in context now. I'm coming back to the point which you asked me. I said I am very, very unhappy. If I have a right to admire somebody, I have a right to criticize somebody as well. And I was very, very unhappy with his silence for 1 month. And the Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah, he came to Guwahati, and I stand by it, it is on records. He came to Guwahati for some Assam government function, and Guwahati is only half an hour's flight to Imphal, and he didn't come. He didn't come. And, all that has been unfolding. And by the way, as if by design, as if by it was a pre-planned, pre-mediated, whatever thing being done. On the day the Home Minister came, there was a sudden escalation of violence. So how do you explain all these things? And today, the honorable minister, who is a BJP minister, he's in Shri Modi's government, he's in the cabinet, he's a very, other than being a political figure, he's a very respected academic in his earlier avatar as a social activist, as an environmentalist, very greatly regarded elderly citizen. And his house came under attack. So there's a lot of chaos, confusion happening, and then so-called, I don't want to even go into the counter allegations and allegations of the civil or the
Yes,
or
Tamo,
the
yeah.
or the Assam Rifles not doing their job and all that.
Yes, Tamo, in fact, we would not want to go into that conversation, because what we expect from this conversation is to find a way forward, not necessarily getting into that slinging match, because it serves no purpose. No one benefits from trying to score a brownie point, across this community lines. At the end of the day, the victims, be it a Kuki or Meitei, they are innocent people who are, at this point of time, more than 50,000 people are in the relief camp. So, Tamo, thank you for that perspective. Ramiji, I wanted to come to you. In fact, I'll club two questions. Number one, as a neutral observer, do you share the same view that a lot of the Meitei community feels that the narrative has been unfair compared to what has been happening, and you have seen this from very close quarter, and you have been tracking this very closely. That's number one. Uh, Number two, as a neutral observer and who is a specialist on Northeast, what in your recommendation should be done, at least to abate this violence? And because the reason why I said is that unless the violence stop, I think other initiatives, for example, the peace talks, so on and so forth, may not be very fruitful.
Um, can you hear me now? May,
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
there seems to be an echo, so if we can shut the audio off, it'll be easier if we can just mute ourselves. Okay, so first of all, of course, I'd like to thank all of you for inviting me. And irrespective of the fact that I've only landed today and I'm slightly jet lagged, I think this is an important enough issue for all of us to come in on and discuss. And therefore, I'm here. So, much gratefulness to Hemochandra ji for actually noting the fact that this might have been a bit of a tight schedule for me. But having said that, your first question is about the narrative. If the narrative has been one-sided. Now, I'd like to, look at this from a larger picture instead of one-sided or, both-sided. The fact of the matter is, apart from in Manipur, not many people have a really great in-depth understanding of on-ground realities. Sad as it may be, it is the truth. People don't understand political dynamics, but moreover so, people have a difficulty understanding tribal dynamics. Tribal dynamics are very different from any other dynamics that we see across, the wide spectrum of differences and opinions that we have across the country. Now, I say this with complete humility, that, I chose to speak because as much as I am a learner, and I think I will never in my entire life stop learning more about what happens in the Northeast region and what happens in each state and how things work, but I have given a substantial amount of time in doing so. The problem becomes is when people come with half-baked knowledge, so they don't know the right questions to ask. I've seen a lot of interviews. I've seen a lot of esteemed journalists asking questions. I've switched it off midway, and I don't say this out of arrogance, but it just is disappointing that you haven't done your homework. Now, how do you do your homework? You do your homework because you have to spend time. This is not just an issue that you treat so lightly that you go into it. I've even noticed this with commentators. Everybody wants to comment on it because it's a trending issue and because everything is based on social media viewership or how much publicity you can get. That's really unfair to the people of Manipur because unless you have a really deep understanding, the situation is so delicate that you shouldn't be commenting or you shouldn't be doing an interview if you and your research team haven't really done some sort of in-depth on-ground sort of analysis and understanding of the situation, because at this point anything can spark any sort of violence and eventually you're not going to get impacted. It's the people, the common man living in Manipur that's going to get impacted. So when you come to narrative, what happens is that the way it works in our country, and it's not just in Manipur, everything is looked from the spectrum of a minority majority perspective. And somehow, a sympathy might veer towards what is considered a minority. And I think that is a very simplistic way of looking at this situation. This situation is far more complex, deeper. It has national security implications, it has internal security implications. It's not just about, the smaller tribe versus the larger tribe, vice versa. It has so many factors that we can't even discuss in the limited time that we have. But I'm sure a lot of you and, your listeners would understand it because you're from the state, that the narrative gets skewed. And that becomes a sad thing because it becomes very simplistic. And anything that's simplistic on a level of crisis that we are facing right now cannot bring solutions. So that is what I feel about your first question. Your second question about the fact that what can be done in the future. The thing is, I've said this from day one, that you're not going to be able to find the future if you're going to depend entirely on the government or you're going to depend entirely on security forces. They have their role to play. Don't get me wrong. We hold them responsible for what, they need to deliver, haven't delivered, or if people's expectations haven't been met. Of course, the responsibility lies on their shoulders. Having said that, I have said this from day one that it's equally important for civil society, to say, okay, we're going to take a call and we're going to, sort of stop the violence, or we are going to take an objection to anybody who's involved in violence. Now, what happens with violence? Violence isn't just, it's not people who are invisible who are shooting in the air. There are certain types of environment that is conducive to violence that is created so that they can indulge in this violence. Now, whether it is, the aid of, their neighborhood, or whether it is, groups that are functioning and supporting each other, whether it is, international efforts, all of this comes together in giving space for violence to happen. If there's a gunslinging terrorist who lives next to my house, um, it's my duty to report them. It's my duty to make sure that my environment does not become a safe haven for him. So I think we cannot take away the responsibility from civil society. I think, the media, generally the public, social media, they all have a responsibility to not deepen the fault lines that have already been deepened at this point. Like Hemchandra ji rightly said, that, this is a society. You cut through the society, create these fault lines, you're never going to be able to fill it again. how is the trust going to come back? There's going to be a trust deficit. Tomorrow, eventually, even if there's peace, children from all, children from all communities will have to go to school together. So one has to look at it in the long term. So I think civil society has to take responsibility. And I also think, now we need to figure out what are the different security imperatives that we need to take? Because at this point, it seems like that much needs to be done even more. It's not enough. So I think the future of Manipur lies in its civil society, its civil organizations, its religious leaders, and the cue can be taken from there.
Yeah, thanks, Rami. That's very very helpful. And in fact, I want to take that question forward to Tamo as well. But before that, to all those people listening in, request you to drop in a message for any questions that you would like to ask our panelists, and we'll try and pick up a couple of questions for there. And after some time, we'll also open the floor for questions from the audience. So please do raise your hand, and we'll try and see if we can take a couple of questions from you. Uh, Tamo, I just wanted to take forward from what Rami ji said. Now, the different players have to play their role in this journey towards peace. Now, she spoke about the role of civil society and not just to depend on the security apparatus, so on and so forth. I wanted to understand from you, Tamo, from the political fraternity, we have seen very two contrasting approach from the politicians who are from the Kuki community and those from the Meitei community. From the Kuki community, the politicians across party line have taken a unified position, whereas a similar position we have not seen from the Meitei community. That's point number one. I wanted to understand from you, uh, is it is it possible? In fact, can you, as a very senior leader, take that ownership of bringing all the political leadership together, irrespective of party lines, and say, look, this is no longer an issue of a political party A versus B. We need to find a way to bring peace. I think a collective effort across party lines will send a very strong message to the public. I just wanted to understand from you, what are the kind of approaches that you believe that you can do, including this joint, across party lines initiative from the political leadership.
Longren, I think you put it in a very good perspective and in a very good sequence. But coming back to the first thing which came into discussion was, I think, Ramiji's, comment on the civil society, which has to, probably the impression I got was that she felt that it is the civil society which has to do the peace process and put it forward and do the good part of the whole thing. But at the moment, it is not going to be possible. I beg to differ with her, because this is something which is we are in a situation where it will not be possible as of now. No civil society groups, whether it is the Cookies or the Meiteis, can take a stand. In fact, we are so polarized, and the situation has come to such a state where we are constrained, and we are probably, we don't have any other way to take the stand of our individual communities. And I think the situation is such. But having said so, eventually the solution has to come from dialogue, from what the civil society has to do it eventually. But I have always maintained the fact that, to give you a corollary, it's a very simple explanation, that when the house is burning, the house is burning still. It is still burning very heavily, and you cannot now get into the reason why the house is burning. Is it because of a short circuit? Is it because of a gas leak? We are not interested in that. The flames have to be doused. The fire brigade has to first douse the flames, and then we can reconstruct the house. This reconstruction, to my mind, has to come after the flames are doused. When the flames are doused and the roadblocks are cleared, when the roadblocks are cleared, then we have to make room for the civil society to walk in. Where is the space today? That space has to be first created. See, armed militants, armed whatever, let us not even use Kuki and Meitei terms now. There are armed skirmishes in Khamen Lok. in Khamenlock recently, when the most I think vicious and the most I think the one of the largest casualties happened in Khamenlock, where sophisticated weapons were used. There were absolutely trained people hurling hand grenades and all kinds of sophisticated weapons and wiping out a whole segment of people, number of people living in a house. These are very serious things. So when you're talking about there's no infiltrations happening, there's nothing, these narratives are going on and on, accusations and counter accusations, but on the ground there is actually very little being done to douse the flames. And once these flames are not doused, when people are being killed on both sides, sentiments are running very high. So once this is not done, and by the way, please, no civil society can do this. This has to be done by the enforcement agencies. It is the army, it is the Assam Rifles, it is the Rapid Action Force, it is the Manipur police. Of course, whatever tainted, the police force in Manipur is today. But still, the Assam Rifles cannot work without the intelligence of the Manipur police. The Rapid Action Force, which has been flown in from Uttar Pradesh, which has been flown in from other parts of the state, how can they work without the intel, without the support of the local police? So there's this trust deficit. Some Assam Rifles people blocking the Shugunu police station where our police commandos are sort of blocked. That means there is totally nobody is trusting anybody else. So where do you go from here? So, first of all, I feel, now let me be very specific. What I feel is that, at least the way I look at it and the way things have come about in the Manipur as of today, this is 36 days have passed. There is not much, 46 days, sorry, not 36, 46 days have passed. I don't think that the security agencies are in complete control and enforcement has taken place. And by the way, even a word of, today, I feel, in fact, bad for Mr. Biren Singh also today. Today, he is also pinned to the wall. Everybody is saying, looking at the second part of your question, that today, you even put a very, very sensitive question to me about Maitai MLAs and Kuki MLAs. At least the Maitai MLAs are not putting any conditions. It's possible. I'm very unhappy with the, present set of MLAs. I have been an MLA for 25 years also. I have also been a member of I have been a speaker of the assembly. I am absolutely very unhappy with their silence, and I wish they could have been more vocal. They are, after all, the public face of the state, and they could have expressed at least the sentiments of the people in a more lucid way. And I'm sure there are BJP MLAs. It's a BJP government. Maybe the Home Minister doesn't understand the way probably he should understand it. Maybe the Prime Minister has not been appraised in the manner he should be appraised. So on those kind of things, I hold them equally responsible. But please, for God's sake, why are you putting all these conditions that पहले बीरेन सिंह को हटाइए, बीरेन सिंह को रिमूव कीजिए, तब फिर बात करेंगे, तब नहीं बात करेंगे? By the way, don't you also please appreciate the fact that Mr. Biren Singh also, in all humility, has, he has owned up to responsibility by saying that it was an intelligence failure. कौन सा चीफ मिनिस्टर हमारे देश में आज तक ये बोल बैठा है कि इंटेलिजेंस फेलियर था? तो कुछ तो आप उनको भी क्रेडिट दीजिए. एंड बाय द वे, कल को मान लिया जाए कल बीरेन सिंह को हटा देते हैं, हट जाइए, उसको हटा दीजिए. अगर उसका सोल्यूशन बीरेन सिंह के हटने के बाद होगा, बीरेन सिंह जी के हटने के बाद पॉपी प्लांटेशन बंद हो जाएगा क्या? बीरेन सिंह जी के हटने के बाद क्या ये घुसपैठियां जो कहते हैं, जिस इन्फिल्ट्रेशन खत्म हो जाएगा क्या? सो टुडे वी आर टू बिजी ट्राइंग टू से दैट ये कंडीशन है, अगर ये नहीं है तो ये है, ये है तो ये है. वो कहते हैं कि सेपरेट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन दो, ये करो वो करो. अगर ये नहीं, अगर बीरेन सिंह को आप हटाओगे नहीं तो हम बात नहीं करेंगे. We will not talk if Biren Singh is not removed. चलो अगर कल बीरेन सिंह को हटा दोगे तो मान लोगे? If Biren Singh ji is taken out from being the chief minister, then all the cookie MLAs will say that it's hunky dory, and now we will not ask for separate administration. We are not going to say anything bad about what we have been saying all this while. So it doesn't stop there. And my take as a politician, or having spent some time in the political space, what I feel is that this has to end somewhere. And by the way, what positive results are you going to come about? We are all human beings. See, I tell you, I'm not defending Mr. Biren Singh at this moment. I'm very unhappy with him also. to be very frank. After all, he's the chief minister. But sometimes, having known him at a very personal front for many, many years, we were colleagues for the last 30 years in the public space. What I know of him, he's not a very diplomatic man. He's more of an emotional man. So what I feel is that even about this very contentious issue about forest, uh, forest, this taking out encroachers, or maybe whatever the issues which he tried to tackle, I think, to my mind, I think his intentions were good. What is wrong in probably fighting against poppy cultivation? What is wrong in fighting a war against drugs? What is wrong in fighting against illegal encroachments? And by the way, we Meiteis have been painted in such a bad light that we were the people who were getting things demolished in New Chekon. New Chekon mein hamare churches ko tod diya. But then these were very illegal, I think, encroachers. And by the way, nobody has said, nobody in the national media, nobody even in your foundation has said that kitni, in Imphal Valley itself, how many Meitei homes and Muslim homes were demolished. You must be knowing, I think, Nongren, I think, Meitei Lonsul,
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Waithau,
Tamo.
I call by Meitei Lonsul, Manipuri, the Sohai gave up. Waithau, you can do the Kamla with Takuki gave up. Reserve Forest Langul, the Kam Takuki gave up. I do the Takuk Panatavro. Honorable Chief Minister Masagi came to the Manakam Takuk gave up. I do the Takuk Natabrava, I do the Kano Natabrava, I do not be the selective winner. Cookie church, I'm a show there. Adigi Kanugi, I'm a show there. That is, played out into the, media as if it was something like a huge crime we have done. Why? I will still go with the public sentiment that maybe it was not done properly. There, I also blame Mr. Biren Singh ji. As a responsible citizen and as a responsible head of the state, as the chief minister, maybe he may have made some mistakes. I mean, it is possible that in time it was, the notice was not served in time. Whatever, after all, these are human issues. If you're going to bulldoze a house, if you're going to break down a house, you need to give them notice and all that. Those are well taken. But I think everybody is, looking, missing the larger picture, and, absolutely, ready to give the blame to everybody. And by the way, it is very natural to err. We are all human beings.
Right.
We can make mistakes. No, I am not trying to defend Mr. Biren Singh today.
No, Tamo, I
hope
am
I don't
absolutely
know,
with you.
Nongren, if I'm making sense. And by the way,
I thought absolutely, Tamo.
I don't know if I'm making sense, but this is what I
Yes,
make out
Tamo.
of it. And I think this blame game has to end somewhere. And by the way, let us not,
Yeah.
if anybody, please, if anybody is ready and is looking for solutions, I think these all things should be unconditional. No conditions attached. Let us, concentrate on rehabilitation. Nongren, you know it. ये जो बारिश का जो season आने वाला है, we are monsoon.
Yes, it's going to be really
It is
bad.
going to create havoc. I have told on Karan Thapar's
Yes.
show that let us talk about rehabilitation. What is the Indian Army doing? The Indian Army should be pressed into service. उत्तरकाशी का जब हुआ था, जब ये जो उत्तरकाशी का जब ये लैंडस्लाइड हुआ था, उत्तरकाशी की बात भी छोड़ दो आप. ये अभी जब ट्रेन एक्सीडेंट उड़ीसा में हुआ तो इंडियन आर्मी फ्लू इन हेलीकॉप्टर्स. इंडियन आर्मी, द एंटायर मशीनरी वाज, तो ये सारी चीजें हमारे मणिपुर में क्यों नहीं दिख रही है? Why it is not happening?
Yes, Tamo. Tamo, that's the points you have brought up are very pertinent, and
if I have made.
So, Tamo, what is absolutely correct, and in fact, I wanted to take one or two points from what you said, and then get Ramiji's view on those. Ramiji, you know this more than anyone else. There has been more than multiple evidences about the role of armed, I would maybe militants, terrorists from across the border. There has been video evidence captured in certain news media. Now, what has intrigued a lot of people in Manipur is that why is the government of India not calling this out, the role of external forces? I wanted to understand from you what perhaps is preventing the government of India, because that is, there's a lot of disappointment in the community that why the fact that it has been captured on camera, there are people who have given personal account, first-hand account of, seeing these militants from across the border.
Okay.
if anything has to start, the first thing that, as per our understanding, the acknowledgement of the issue should be the first step. If in the absence of that, one was wondering why or how could this violence be prevented. I wanted to hear from you on this
So,
aspect, Ramiji.
fair enough question. And this is where I would like to come back to what Hemochandra ji pointed out to my response on civil societies. I also said that, I understand that we have expectations from the government, we have expectations from the forces, and responsibility should be laid on their shoulders. I never said that civil society alone can do this. Having said that, here again, civil society comes into play. I have been on debates where your local civil society has not accepted that there is infiltration. Local people have not accepted, and I'm not saying this tribe hasn't, that tribe hasn't. Everybody knows what we're talking about. Has not accepted that there is demographic change, has not accepted that that demographic change has impacted the peace and prosperity of their own state. Right? There are 30,000 registrations of refugees in Mizoram. There is not one in Manipur. And people have the audacity to publicly say that there is no infiltration, that demographic change is just internal movement. This is what has been said on television. This is where civil society comes in. If you do not start with an honest base and you say that, yes, there is infiltration, and that infiltration is maybe not the only cause, but one of the major causes for, disruption in our state, or of conflict in our state, then you cannot find a solution. Aap government ke upar kitna kuch bhi kar lo, what is the government going to say? Because there are local people who are helping them come and settle in. If there was local infiltration coming and settling around my house, I would know. There is no way I would not know it. But as a citizen of this country, I would have the responsibility and the moral obligation to accept it, at least not to lie about it. And this is hence why I feel that civil society is important. How are you going to find a solution if majority of your people living on the borders don't accept that they're responsible for allowing this to happen? Of course, when the home minister came, he said there's 80 kilometers of fencing that is left, which will be completed very soon. But again, आप fencing भी कर लो, आप वहाँ double the amount of forces that you have. If there is local support, infiltration will not stop. We have seen this in multiple states, not just in the northeastern frontier. We've seen it on the northwestern frontier. I don't think that these solutions can come straight, in a very straight and forward manner, where the government and the security is going to come and solve all these problems. Having said that, now when we talk about the government perspective, the solutions are very long term. This is not this is not one of those solutions that is going to come overnight. For example, the drugs and weapon trade, the poppy cultivation. Who are the perpetrators? Who is it benefiting? This has to be, a clear long-term investigation, and it has to come out in the open. We need to also look at, issues like police reforms, governance education at IAS training academies in Missouri. They need a complete overhaul. Reservations provisions, they are on completely skewed grounds. If there should be, it should be, on economic grounds, or there are other partisan performing state apparatuses that need to be questioned. So this is, these reforms, obviously we've been talking about it for a very long time, but these reforms are also going to take a really long time. But I agree that there's been a bit of a failure of intelligence as well. But again, this again comes down to the kind of reforms that we need, and those reforms are not going to come overnight. But this was my response to what Hemochandra ji said. Would you be please kind enough to repeat what you had asked me?
All right. So I was asking Ramiji regarding the government's silence or not acknowledging the fact that there are cross-border forces that is trying to
Correct.
destabilize the situation in Manipur,
Correct.
and there are multiple evidence towards that. So,
See, I don't think,
why is it that?
it's not that they don't know about it or they don't accept it. Of course, they have. That's why there was such a um, there was such a focus on the fencing. But now we have to widen our view and also look at it from the point of view of our foreign relations. It's not that easy to balance everything. You know, Myanmar has had a change of dispensation. They themselves don't have control of a lot of Chin groups that are operating in Myanmar, and we've seen this historically, that these are difficult terrains. There's lack of control of the dispensation in Myanmar on a lot of these areas. Those areas have become breeding grounds for us. We also know that there's a lot of influence now, since the dispensation has changed in Myanmar, of China operating in these areas. We don't know who are the stakeholders at this point. We can only take educated guesses. And in that situation, it becomes very difficult to say, this is exactly what we're going to do. This is exactly what we're going to do. I think the best option they have right now is, honestly, I think to stem the border areas, which they're doing, and to make it fairly technologically advanced so that you can keep out as many as possible. I think it's also important to have, and I know this is not the atmosphere to have it in. I'm very clear about that, that right now, if somebody asks for an RRC or asks for, any sort of accountability, things are going to flare up. But at some point, Manipur will need that, because it would be completely unfair, to have these people settle in areas like this, where people are happy that they're coming in from Myanmar, they're settling here. That is not a problem, but inclusion of a scheduled tribe list is a problem, so these are unfair grounds. I also think it's really important, and I come from the understanding that the government has full knowledge of what is happening. I think they are very well aware, but I think their moves have to be so cautious so as to not make a wrong move. Just because the situation is so sensitive in Manipur, that yes, local observers may be feeling that, there's been a delay. But I think it's been a very difficult proposition for them as well. And, we at the surface don't know everything. So I would like to give them the benefit of doubt, because I think what this government has done for the Northeast region, and I've been traveling here pre this government and post this government, there's been a world of change. 15 years ago, just the psychological impact of, somebody going to the Northeast, people would tell me, oh, oh my God, it's so far. Oh my God, what are you going to do there? Oh my God, are there places to stay there? Now it's almost become like the kind of place everybody wants to go to, because it's become a part of mainstream consciousness. So I think, we cannot doubt their intentions. I think we can't doubt their knowledge. I think it is a difficult proposition for them. I think the illegal immigration issue, they have never said that it doesn't exist. It does exist. And I think those, there's steps that have been taken. Whether those steps now on ground are, 100% foolproof or not, I don't think we'll, ever get to that. I don't think any step on border areas like this can be 100% foolproof unless those communities who are living there, know what's best for them. And I've seen this example. I say this in terms of a case study that I've seen in Tripura. And it has nothing to do with, I agree with the fact that Manipur is far more complex than Tripura. But the role of the Jamaatiyas in Tripura was a very, very crucial role in halting illegal infiltration or NLFT networks across the border. And I think, therefore, I keep coming back to the fact that locals in these areas must have responsibility. And we must lay responsibility on their shoulders.
Yeah, Ramiji, thanks. To that point, in fact, there is one question that has come from the listener, and I'll just, that question is specific to you. So the question is, what is the role of Naga in Manipur? You are very well aware the significance of Naga. They have a sizable population. They have their own peace talks going on with the government of India, there has been instances of clashes with the cookies in the past. What role do you see the Nagas playing in this particular crisis, specifically with respect to restoring some peace and normalcy?
They have a huge role, because right now they are the people who are, outside of this conflict, and they can mediate. They've also mediated, negotiated, their leadership, their elders with the government, but the same way I say this for all communities involved. We have Meithei leadership, we have Meithei elders, we have Kuki leadership, Kuki elders, we have Naga leadership, Naga elders. Everybody needs to come on the table. A lot of these people have a lot of influence on their communities. It's not as if they don't. So I think, that needs to come out far stronger than it has. Me sitting here in Delhi, I'm not seeing a lot of, I'm just not getting the feeling or the representation that should come out of the Northeast, in terms of, come out of Manipur, in terms of the fact that the elders are taking a lead role, or, organizations or influence people who influence these communities are taking a lead role, because nobody wants to speak up. Everybody's scared because somebody or another is going to get upset. So I think all communities have to realize that this is not a question of victimhood. This is your state. Your state is going to be impacted. Nobody is blaming one community over the other. But it personally, it feels bad to me, because 15 years ago when I used to go to Manipur, there was nothing there. Nobody wanted to travel there. Most of the young kids in Manipur were in Bangalore or in Delhi. When I started coming back in the last couple of years, there was a sea of change, not just infrastructure, but there was, relative peace, 5 years of great harmony. People wanted to come and visit Manipur. People were talking about it as the place to go to. It almost became fashionable. Now, who is it going to impact? Is it only going to impact the Cookies? No. Is it only going to impact the Meiteis? No. Is it only going to impact the Nagas? No. It's going to impact everybody who considers the state as their home. And that now, from being a peaceful state to becoming a conflict state, that perception to change is going to take a really long time. So it's not just about the Nagas. I think the Nagas have a huge role. And I've said this also, and I've written this also, that the Nagas can come across as, great peacemakers at this point, because they understand, obviously, they understand the ground realities, they understand, communities, but also right now they can play neutral mediators. But alongside that, I think leadership and influence needs to come out of all the other communities as well.
Thanks, Rami. I think I personally fully agree with the significant role that Nagas can play. By the way, there are a lot of requests to speak. We will take, we'll allow you to do that. But before that, I wanted to go to Tamo Hemochandra for one more question before we allow the listeners to ask the questions. Tamo, before we started the show, we had a very brief chat around the environment impact and about this poppy cultivation and the uses of fertilizers and pesticides. I wanted to get your understanding or your view on the long-term effects. And I'm asking these questions because in Manipur, we are aware of the fact that many of the fertilizers, pesticides were apparently diverted for poppy cultivation. And all this poppy cultivation, since they are in the high altitude in the hills, at some point of time, they will find their way to the valley. And people in Manipur are highly dependent on all these natural resources, water resources. I wanted to understand your view on this.
Nongren, thank you very much, and I think thank you very much for your foresight, because this probably topic has not been sort of addressed as of in the discourses which I've heard so far. I'm sorry I lost you in between because some connectivity issue, and I probably lost a bit of the points being discussed. But nevertheless, to pick it up to your point about, I heard something about infiltrations, and which is a very valid point, because the whole economy, the whole economy, which was the traditional economy or whatever it was, traditional crops like maize or vegetables or whatever the thing which was the traditional farming which was going on in the hills, particularly in the cookie dominated areas, has been totally changed over the last few years, and poppy cultivation has come in a big way. I don't think there is no point, sort of debating on that. It is, everything is there. Drones are there. You would even know that the one honorable MLA, a young lady, I mean, who's got elected recently, there's been, I think I've seen the picture myself. She herself posing in front of a poppy, poppy field, where I mean, probably I don't know how it came about, and that is very disturbing. But yes, coming back to the environmental aspect, because I've had a stint as the environment and forest minister as well, and as the water resources minister also during my tenure as a minister in the government, in the previous governments. And what I saw was that, at least in the context of, say, I'll give you a very small example of Singda. The Singda Dam today is shrinking day by day. There is no water there. And, other than the environmental impact, which has already been going on over the years because of slash and zoom, because of, pressure on land, it has already created a lot of issues, because you have flash floods, water shortage, water scarcity, nothing, no, sort of, there is no vegetation to, trap the water and all that stuff. But this was, as it is very bad from before, this was an issue which we were grappling with, and suddenly there's huge tracts, of land completely going for poppy cultivation. When poppy is cultivated, pehle to in the earlier, in the practice, the slash and burn, we had a gestation period of a recuperation period of about 5 years. Even if these trees were cut, they were not cut from the roots. They were not cut from the roots. They were cut so that they could regenerate. And all these, especially the nomadic nature of the Kuki tribes, mostly because the Nagas and other tribes have more sedentary kind of lifestyle, and the Kukis have this little traditional, I think, manner of I mean, shifting from a place to the other. So what was happening over these years is that this absolutely uprooting the whole vegetation, the natural vegetation for over years. And by the way, I think Nongren, you put in a very nice point, that whatever these hue and cry, and this has not been happening in the last 1 or 2 years. This has been happening all the time during the planting season in the valley. All the farmers were crying for fertilizers not available. It is a fact, fertilizers were being sold in the black market, and even in the black market it was not available. Earlier we never understood the dynamics. Now we can understand it. Now I think it will not be wrong. I don't know, I don't have proof to substantiate it, but the very fact that huge amount of weedicides and pesticides and fertilizers have been totally diverted to the hills for large scale poppy cultivation. So basically, what is happening today? See, let us put it in a very simple way. A very poor farmer, whether, let it be a Meitei, let it be a Kuki, let it be a Naga, let us not even, sort of put it under the prism of, ethnic lines. If a poor farmer who was growing pumpkins and maize for a living is suddenly asked and is funded and given lots of, no money spent, and all the money, all the sort of investment is being done by these huge, what do you say, these sponsors. I don't even want to name them. I don't want to cast any aspersions on anybody, but these so-called people have, I mean, made entrap these poor farmers, and these poor farmers, like, it's easy money for them, and then they are being pumped with, they've been, whatever traditionally for centuries the kind of at least sustainable agriculture which they were attending to has been totally finished. Nongjan, am I making sense?
Yeah, Tamu, absolutely. And
Yeah, so anyway, coming back to the point, so what is happening? You are actually poisoning. You're actually poisoning the earth. You're going to be drinking poison water. You're going to make the land totally scorched earth where nothing will be able to grow. And by the way, and with this kind of environmental degradation, we are only I mean, looking at doom, and it is going to affect everybody. It is not going to affect only one community. And look at the whole, the whole dynamics of infiltrations across the border. By the way, this is not something which is happening just without a foreign hand. You
Exactly.
can see it as clear as day. Please, they're lungi clad. They're lungi clad boys coming, armed boys. By the way, you know it, Nongren, we know it. Everybody knows who's been in the Northeast about our dress code, about what we wear and all that. We Maitais or cookies don't wear lungis. These are probably Kuki-Chin Mizo group of people, but they are not they're coming from across the border. And please, for God's sake, I'm very, very unhappy with even, these policy makers back in Delhi sitting here who have no idea, of the ground realities there. And I think Rami Desai ji also, I think, has aptly, given this sentiment in a very lucid way. Because when these things are happening, when policies are being framed, we have a porous border. We have a porous border with Burma, where nothing is fine. There's a 4,400-kilometer long, border with Manipur itself. And by the way, there's hardly, the Home Minister announced some 10 kilometers of fencing now in 2023.
That
So
is
what is that going to? What is that
yeah,
going
yeah.
to?
Yes,
So anyway,
absolutely. That's a very, that's a big issue. I mean, the center has not given the due attention that the state of Manipur needs.
and
Somehow that
Nongren, just a minute. I missed one point. Just allow me to say it. Then you can come back to me. This is not even a state subject. This is a case of national security. Do you even realize the fact that the whole of the Northeast, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, we have common borders with China, we have common borders with Burma, we have common borders with Bangladesh. And by the way, in a whatever political or military sense of the word, there is only the chicken's neck, which is hardly 18 kilometers of land, which separates the northeast, the entire northeast, that the Siliguri neck, if you talk about, and look at the whole dynamics, the whole. I think even when the country was divided between, East Pakistan, whatever the erstwhile Pakistan, then East Pakistan, then Bangladesh, I think the
yeah,
whole of the northeast has been done a great injustice with no fault of ours. Do you even know that Dhaka, the present day capital of Bangladesh, was the place where our elder folks used to go and
yeah,
study?
Tamu, yeah, Tamu,
So we have
there's
everything to
a lot of,
lose.
yeah,
We have everything to lose.
unfortunately, yeah, absolutely, Tamu, and absolutely with you that
I mean,
a lot of
see, look
things
at
that
look at
used
the
to be
long, look
done
at the
has not
wrongs,
been
look
done.
at the structural
Yeah,
wrongs from which we
yeah,
have
Tamu,
suffered over the centuries, over years,
yeah,
British
Tamu,
colonial
Tamu,
time,
Tamu, we
and
are
from now.
fully, yeah, I know the, the anger, the disappointment, and we share that same feeling. A lot of people in Manipur back home share the same feeling. But in the interest of time, there are a lot of hands which has gone up, and I would ask first Blood and Iron to make his point. Just a request. Number one, please identify yourself and to whom your question is, and please make your question very brief. We just have limited time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Bloodanaran speaking, and my question is to both Rami ji and Mr. Hemochandra ji. See, you have put forward your points, and obviously you are based there, and you have done a whole host of research, and so did Rami ma'am as well. But the fact of the matter is, we are not calling a spade a spade. I mean, the cookie narco terrorists, they haven't been brought to book, have they? How many of them are roaming around in the state? I mean, they're in their thousands. There has been no all-out military operation that has been carried out, and even from the central government itself, right from the prime minister and to the home minister, there has been no statement condemning this narco terrorism that has been going on across. I mean, Mr. Hemchandra, being the son of the soil, he obviously knows it, and so does Ms. Ramiji as well. But I mean, for this silence, this actually criminal silence that has been from the central government. I mean, what do you think is going to happen next? Is there going to be a military operation, an all-out military operation against these narco terrorists? Will we see any justice for the victims? That's all I need to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. And request, Ramiji, you go first, and request to you and Tamo Hemo to give your answer brief, because we have so many others listeners who have raised their hand. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And of course, it's not been lost on anybody on the emotional turmoil that it's taken on the people of the state. Nobody. And as much as your heart or, any Manipuri's heart goes out for the situation, trust me, this situation has really touched a lot of people in the rest of the country as well. I have never seen such coverage, such attention, and such concern. So, starting from that foundational point, let me say this. The situation again is so delicate that I don't think, somebody, the government calling out somebody at this point, possibly, and this is conjecture because I can't read the government's mind, they would think that would do a lot of good at this point, because you call out, one person, the other person gets upset. The crisis will never end, the violence will never end. Right now, everybody's focus should be on the violence ending. And as for the question of bringing the perpetrators to task, there's no question that that has to be done. But that can only be done when there's some amount of relative peace. Otherwise, how do you do this without enraging, communities against each other? So, I think all of that will happen in time. The perspective here should be some amount of peace at this point.
Thanks. Tamo, you
Yeah.
thoughts on
That's a very nice question, and I think very well asked. I think in the first place, I maintain this view that this has to stop. Narco terrorism has to stop. It has immense environmental, immense long term, which can actually annihilate the entire society. Having said so, but the situation is very volatile at the moment, so that coming with a very sweeping statement to my mind, I will not probably do it as of now, because a proper investigation also needs to be established. Because see, today allegations can happen, counter allegations can happen, but yes, we can see it as clear as day that it is happening. It is happening. But at these very fragile and delicate times, I think, if my probably take is not to, point fingers too much at who are doing it. I think what I would probably ask the question, answer the question is the fact that an investigation which has to be done to establish what is happening has to be ascertained in the first place. And yes, there is no way out. We have to finish this. We have to finish this. Whether it is the army, whether it is the Assam Rifles, whether it is our own Manipur police only, if nobody is going to help us, that we have to finish this. Otherwise, if we don't finish this drug, this nexus, drug, arms, and this whole destruction of our social fabric, and the younger generation, a lot of younger generation are falling prey to all these substance abuse and stuff like that. So investigation needs to be done, and accountability needs to be fixed, because even a small semblance, even a small semblance of justice will go a long way, and which is not happening. Once this happens, definitely there will be some semblance of I think confidence in the system. At the moment, it is not happening. All these people who are dealing with drugs and all that, nobody has been convicted. There's been no conviction either from the judiciary, in the judicial process has also failed us. So where is the accountability being happening? So what I feel is, to sum it up, number one, it has to end. In my case, in whatever way, how we implement it is a different matter, but narco terrorism has to stop.
Thank you, Tamo. I'll go to Abhay next, but before that, there was a request in the chat box to translate what Tamo had said in Manipuri, the 2-3 sentences, because that's a very important point. So what Tamo said, for the benefit of the audience who are not familiar with the Manipuri language, what Tamo said was that the eviction and destruction of all the illegal construction and encroachment was done across community lines, including those people in Meiteis in the valley, Meitei Pangals, and so on and so forth. So it was not specific to a particular community or a tribe. Abhay, I will allow you to ask that question, but request you to identify whom you are asking the question, and please be very brief. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Namaskar. My question is to both Hemochandra ji and to Rami ji. Thank you very much for your comments. A foundation of any healthy democracy is to marshal the flow of information lucidly and competently, and to command the narrative courageously. And whenever we see victims in Bharat in particular, including our Meitei brothers and sisters, I always find that we seem to fall back on heightened civilizational principles such as karma and dialogue, when actually you are victims who are being essentially, they want to wipe you out. And that is not the way you deal with this situation. So my first question is, can both of you make a pledge to go to the government of India and ask them to sort out this communication gap? Because when you do have clear communication and you bring the broader public on side, it makes a massive difference. We saw that here in the UK when the entire mass media here twisted the narrative on what happened in Leicester and turned black into white and white into black. So if you can make a pledge, because you're both extremely articulate and brilliant people, to go to the government of India and sort this out, I think it'll make a big difference. And the second thing is, at the local level, our beautiful Meitei brothers and sisters need to do exactly the same thing. So you have an organic grassroots response with clear communication and courage, please. None of this sort of monkey balancing and, we're all going to find a solution. There's one clear party here, funded by external powers, advanced weapons training from abroad, drugs, separatist politics, infiltrating media, civil society. It's quite clear who, and what is happening here. We need to make that clear to the broader public. That's all I really have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, Rami, you go first. Yeah.
So, Abhay, your point is well taken, but I don't quite agree with it. Number one, there's no need for tokenism. The communication, as far as I'm concerned, what the Manipuris want, irrespective of which community they are from, is very clear. The Manipuris want peace. The fact is that there are miscreants, and I don't think panning one entire community is beneficial for the future peace and prosperity of Manipur. We have to keep the focus, the eye on the ball, which is to have peace, irrespective of anything, because these are real people. Their homes are getting burned, people are being displaced, and at the end of the day, everybody has to live together. There is no other future. So these fault lines cannot be deepened by statements like, we know who the perpetrators are, we know which community is the perpetrator. No, I disagree with that. I think perpetrators are perpetrators. I think civil society has a responsibility, irrespective of which community they are from, on calling out the perpetrators, and the government's responsibility is to take them to task at a time that is appropriate. Like Hemochandra ji said, this is a democracy. Due investigational processes are a must. If that does not happen, then there is no difference between us and the protesters that I have been calling out, who've been sitting there saying, we want a solution first before peace. It doesn't work like this. Dissent cannot be anarchy, irrespective of the community that you belong to. But yes, that is my limited, say on this.
Yeah, Abhay, can I respond to you now?
Yes, please, Amo. Please go ahead.
No, I'm responding to Abhay's question, and of course, we are on the same page on that, because from day one, I had been pledging this, that and making this call very fervently, that the public, the peace and dialogue is the only answer since day one. This has been happening, but these are difficult issues. These are difficult issues. But yes, I think I'll go with Abhay here, and probably maybe people may disagree with Abhay, but he has lucidly put it in such a nice way. I completely agree with Abhay. What is happening today is, in the Indian media today, what is as black, as clear as day, has been painted as something by some other color. By the way, did you even realize somebody went to Rishi Sunak? And I don't want to say anything about it. Somebody went to the British Prime Minister and made a petition saying that, all the Christian churches have been burnt, and all it is a pogrom, it is a genocide, and all that stuff. And for close to, I think, 30 days, the whole country only heard one narrative, which is not fair, and that is why voices like us, who have always played for peace, tranquility, and the
My dear
moderate
Heritage,
face
can
of.
you check it up? He must be having network issue.
I think
Yeah, but
there is some,
so
sort
so
of,
so no. To sum it up, basically speaking, I think, see, all these things have to be also uh, given a fair chance of being represented in the in the correct light. And then you can't sort of start saying that even investigations is required just to give the benefit of doubt. After all, we are a democracy. We cannot just pronounce judgments on people before their trial. That is in the democratic spirit. But what about perceptions? What about perceptions? What about the thought process which is going on? And every time you talk about this demographic event change, these figures are also all official figures. By the way, do you even know, Abhay, that this 53%, this figure about Meiteis in the valley is not correct to my mind. There's a whole floating population of people who have migrated because we have no avenues. We don't come under the category of STs. So many people have gone off to London, although their names might be still there in the electoral roll in Aadhaar cards in Imphal technically, but they've all moved out. So frankly speaking, if you look at the real, or somebody may say, somebody like Karan Thapar might say, no, these figures are this figures is that, 2001, 11, 1909, you don't have proof. Who's bothered about proof? Who's bothered about all these figures in the first place? How many infiltrations have taken place? How many young people, young boys and girls have moved out of Imphal because lack of facility, lack of jobs? Then maybe we are already in a minority. Who knows? I can say that, but then I can't prove it. So what I'm trying to say is that this lopsided, this whole lobby about. And by the way, I still stand by my cookie brothers and sisters are very, very good in terms of social media, in terms of media management. And by the way, the top bureaucracy, right from the bottom, they've had 3 former chief secretaries from the community. I'm not casting aspersions on them, but yes, the lobby works. That's how things work when it comes to. It's all about propaganda. Look at UK, for instance. You've said it in your own words that things have been so distorted, and
yeah,
what you don't even know. If you tell the same
yeah,
lies for 10 times, then people start believing that it is true. So
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know if I.
in
Yeah.
fact, you made a very pertinent point. The correct narratives need to be told to the policymakers because then only the solution would be directed in the in the right direction. We have two requests. I will first go to Vladimir and then maybe to Satyajit. Yeah, Vladimir, just go ahead, identify yourself and to whom your question is, and please be very brief. Thank you.
सलाम आप सभी को और धन्यवाद ये मौका देने के लिए तो आई हैव जस्ट टू स्मॉल क्वेश्चंस एंड रामी जी आप आपसे ही प्रश्न है फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन आई हैव इज दैट जो बात देखा गया है from this process which happened in चूराचांदपुर there had been a systematic decades long process जहाँ पे इनके education institute पे कब्जा किया गया इनके भूमि लिया गया पैरेलल इकोनॉमी बनाए गए खदेड़े गए even by 2011 their population was less than 4.3%. So it was a well planned thing जो पहले से ही चल रहा था. In such cases, if we go for peace, say we have peace, we have all things happen, how do we maintain the peace when the other side keeps disregarding peace whenever their interest conflicts? जैसे 2015 या 2007 में हुआ. First question. और second question है, what is the impact of this process? Do you see any long-term impact of this process on our look east policy? Thank you.
So I think this is a very good question, because for the simple reason that these are facts that have been laid bare in front of us. Demographic change is, a reality, and we all know this, except the people who've been with me on debates who've said that there's been no demographic change. And that's why I reiterated that you have to start by accepting it first, irrespective of the community you're from. And of course, there has been some amount of systematic control, because if you are beneficiaries of reservations basis, your tribal status, then, there are going to be benefits that are going to come to you, which you are going to be able to sort of tilt in your favor, But having said that, um, the problem here is, again, that what is your option? Your option is limited. Earlier on, we mentioned the chicken's neck, the entire Northeast region being in a really precarious position. Now, is territorial integrity not primary? Of course, it has to be primary. We've seen what has happened for decades in the Northeast, where, territories have been inched away from our hands, right? So, we cannot, it's a very difficult question to answer, because, the truth of the matter is you cannot do much but, find a way to live amicably with each other while making your rules and regulations very clear of the land in terms of infiltration coming in, demographic change happening, in terms of understanding the Metis sentiment of why the community is feeling threatened. Any sort of dialogue, any sort of peace is only effective if, there's mutual understanding of concerns. You cannot disregard somebody's concerns just because, you think that it's, marginally a larger community than you are. That's no grounds for this. So I think we don't have a lot of options. I think one will have to figure out ways to have some amount of mutual respect. If I had in my community, if I had miscreants that were working against the state, against my state, against the national integrity of my country, I would be calling them out. I would be opposing them, irrespective of how they are related to me. And I think that's the sentiment that people will have to move forward with, because I don't think, these states are hugely important to us in terms of our national integrity. Their territorial integrity cannot be compromised. Therefore, your option is limited. How is it going to impact our Act East policy? I mean, it's already impacted our Act East policy. Manipur was supposed to be our gateway to, South Asia. This was supposed to be, these areas were supposed to be our answer to the BRI. We've just compromised all of that. There is no way of limiting the consequences that it has not just had on the Northeast region, but had on the entire country. So our Act East policy, which was really, the reason that the Northeast region took a position of centrality in the Indian mainstream consciousness, has just been compromised. And I think that is what everybody needs to realize. We can keep, this is what I keep coming back to. We can keep saying that, our communication acha nahi hai, hamara, our policies are not good, our central figures don't understand. We can keep this blame game going on. But the fact of the matter is, eventually all communities have to live together. Yes, they have to live together as per the rules of the land. That has to be enforced. And that is where you can take accountability. If post this violence, whenever peace is to come, if, accountability has not been received, and the laws of the land have not been enforced, then you can possibly turn around and say, the government is responsible. But at this point, I don't think we have a choice, unfortunately so.
Yeah. Tamo, you want to quickly add to this question that Ramiji was responding, particularly the impact.
Yeah. In the first place, the questioner was not Vladimir didn't ask it to me, and secondly, I think Ramiji has said it very nicely. I have nothing to add on that.
Sure.
The question
I
was
did,
for her. Yeah. So she's.
yeah, no problem, Tamo. I just thought in case you wanted to at any point.
No, she's done a fair job of the.
Satyajit,
Yeah.
I did say that I'll come next to you, but before that, I will go to my co-host Wong, because I saw him raise his hand. Wong, please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi. So I just wanted to raise this question on behalf of Biswanath Sharma. He's asking a question: how can we start a dialogue when one group is adamant on demanding for the state to be disintegrated? This is probably a question for Hemochandra ji. So, uh, yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, Wong, that's exactly a very good question. No, I absolutely not. Now, when somebody is asking for a separate state or an administration, these things should not be listened to at all. In fact, the first things first. Any dialogue, whatever we are talking about, whatever we've been talking about for so long, will have no meaning unless we first enforce that peace comes. Peace comes means as in the we have to crack down. Today, I mean, of course, I don't want to sound parochial or one-sided, but by the way, have you ever seen some sophisticated weapons of whatever you're talking about, Dragunov sniper rifles, you're talking about very sophisticated weapons coming across the border? I don't think any, we have not seen any, in fact, weapons being I think either captured or being surrendered from across the border. So if that is not happening, how will we go ahead? There's so many roadblocks. There's absolutely all these blockades happening. How can you move on? So this has to be, to your question. I'm totally with you and Vishwanath Sharma ji, who has put this question to us, that this has to be first enforced. Then we can talk now. Have I made myself clear?
Amol, thanks for answering that. I know that Rami had another engagement at 8 o'clock. Rami, will just take few more minutes if
Please,
that's
please.
okay with you.
Please,
Yeah.
please. I'll be happy to take any more questions.
Yeah. So I think Satyajit, you had a question. Yeah, please go ahead. Identify yourself and the speaker whom you are raising that question. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Good evening. This is Satyajit Verma. My question is to Rami ma'am. She clearly mentions that the role of local bodies or local people around the border area will play a very crucial role. Okay, लेकिन मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि वो एरिया में जब आर्म मिलिटेंट्स या फिर आर्म फोर्सेस they have the maximum authority and maximum power, and even the layman, the common citizens are feared to even speak about anything good at the moment. मेरे पास लाइव एग्जांपल है जहाँ पे एक रिपोर्टर से जो बंदी है ये बोल रही है कि मेरे नेबर्स ने मुझे हेल्प किया, लेकिन मेरे घर से जितने भी सोना और मेरे सर्टिफिकेट उन्होंने निकाला हेल्प करने के बाद और अपने पास रख लिया घर को जलाने से पहले, लेकिन दे आर स्केर्ड राइट नाउ टू इवन कम आउट एंड गिव इट बैक टू हर, because in case if they are found that they are helping somebody, their hands will be cut. तो मेरा सिर्फ यही क्वेश्चन है कि जो लोकल बॉडीज का जो डिलेमा है कि कैसे वो बाहर आए और कैसे दे कैन रेज देयर वॉइस अगेंस्ट द अनवांटेड थिंग्स हैपनिंग, क्योंकि कुछ 10 या 15% जो है जिसके पास हथियार है और उनका मोटिव इज कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट, बाकी रेस्ट ऑफ द पीपल वांट्स टू लिव पीसफुली. सो कैन यू थ्रो सम लाइट ऑन दिस?
Again, it's an interesting question because we can look at it in one or two ways. Now, one of the ways that you look at it and in the way I meant it is that there are a lot of tribal affinities across the border, right? These are the people that can really raise their voices against infiltration if they want to. Number two, when it comes to fear, fear is a real thing. One can only, with utter respect, only conjecture what should happen. But there are live examples of this happening. The Tripura border reference that I took earlier on, the Jamatia community, they used to pick up their children, because they would not give them right of way into their state. And what did this community do? This community could have said, no, give our children back and we will, we will let you through. They said, no, you take our children and we'll produce more. That was an example of courage. I'm again, in a completely humanistic sort of perspective. I'm not saying that everybody can do this, everybody should do this. It's a choice that you have, and of course, the fear is real. And this will take a long time to disarm these people. That's why everybody has to understand that infiltration is so dangerous, because you don't know who's coming in. It might be a case of some sort of ethnic affinity, or some sort of tribal affinity to you. But can you take surety of the person who's coming in is not influenced by foreign hands, international hands, that we've seen happen in the Northeast forever? So that's why I say that border areas have a very important communities that live in these areas. Communities that have affinity across the border have very important roles to play. They have to speak up. And unfortunately, backlashes will happen, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy to do that, and I'm not saying that, oh, I'll have the courage to do it, but somebody will have to do it. And of course, this it needn't be said that this responsibility also lies in the hands of, lawmakers, in the hands of, our forces, because to disarm these people, they will have to really operate in a fashion that they haven't operated before, because we haven't seen a situation this bad before. So it's a difficult situation, but somebody will have to speak up. Otherwise, this is never going to end. And it's going to compromise, it's going to compromise our security, not just for the state, but for the country.
Nongden, can I add on one or two
Please,
points?
briefly. Yeah.
Very briefly, very well said. But about I just wanted to say that this very pertinent question about people are not able to take a stand. Even the very fact that you put those valuables, uh, uh, for safekeeping, and still you cannot return those things for the sake of your own safety. This is a real, I think, this is actually a very fearful reality which we are all facing. But let us not even go into the genesis of how it has come about to this state, which is very long. It has just not come about in a day. This has been happening for maybe 50, 60, 70 years, right from colonial times to the present times. So what I'm trying to say is that there's been a huge displacement. There's been a huge displacement of people here and there, because you're talking about whole new set of people, although they may have had similar cultural ties, and maybe same language and affinity, but they've come across from another country, say to be specific, from Myanmar. So there the system is very different, the way they've lived is very different. They've lived under a junta. There's no democracy happening there. That place is, these are very complicated sort of things. So what I feel is that what over and above what Ramiji has said is also the fact that this has to be tackled at a very slightly higher levels, the macro level, where maybe the state government does have a small role. It's where the union government, that the central government, vis-a-vis the international issues, where they have to be very, very firm on the China, on the Myanmar, the Bangladesh policies, where you've had the issues of Rohingyas. You've had, this is not the first time. And by the way, the Jammu and Kashmir and northern sector is no less, more important than us. I think the Southeast Asia, the Southeast Asia corridor, the whole look east policy, the land route. You can go up to Singapore by land route if you take this Moreh Tamu, highway across to Laos, Cambodia, and everybody. So this is very important for us. So I think it's high time. It's high time we all wake up to this reality, and look at all these aspects
Tamo, can I
in a
just
very
interrupt?
layered manner.
Can I just interrupt you over there, Tamo?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
so basically, see, idea is I'm not talking about what government or what any state agencies are going to do. My main dilemma is how the common people at the grassroots level will get that kind of courage from where. So, what are the plan of actions so that we can uh, make them understand that these people, though their ethnicity lines might be same, but that mindset we just mentioned, that they are from a different country altogether.
Yeah.
So how do we encourage are local people, because other side is not even ready to come and sit on the table and speak. So this audience is incorrect for me. I think the audience has to be from the other side so that they can understand it.
Yeah,
See,
Satyajit, Tamo, I'll just add on to what Satyajit said. How do we enforce the law? Because the law of the land is very clear. Irrespective of which community or tribe you belong to, as long as you are a citizen of Myanmar, you cannot come across the border. You be maybe a Kuki, you may be a Meitei, or you may be from whatever community. That enforcement has to happen. Tamo, yeah, just very quickly if you can add to it, and then we'll go to the next question.
I'll just say one sentence. See, Nongren, I cannot talk about Burma. I cannot talk about Myanmar. I can talk about my country. I can talk about India. See, this is what I feel is that at the moment, civil society or civil society or the society will not be able to enforce or do anything as of now, because things are so bad that once, uh, you know, a lot of influential people from both sides are all involved here. A lot of politics is involved. So I think first of all, some semblance of semblance of order has to be enforced first, and that needs to be done at two levels. And one level is at the union government's level, and the second level is with a understanding with the state government as well. To put them in the same sort of mold where intelligence sharing, all lots of things. This cannot be done in isolation. So once this is done, then it will follow. But at the moment, you cannot leave this thing to civil society. And how can it be? How can it happen? Once the civil society doesn't have any trust on the army, the civil society is having a lot of trust deficit on the enforcement agencies. First, this has to be established. Then only order will come.
Sure, Tamo. And Tamo, Ramiji, Meitei Heritage Society has been speaking to some of the victims from Manipur, and one of the experiences that has been shared with us, and which is very disturbing, is that uh, even like 20, 30 years back, when they were in school, there were instances, suddenly there is this, few boys and girls who they were told had come from neighboring state. But the fact was that neither could they speak the local language, or they could not speak the language from which particular state they apparently had come. Therefore, special classes were held so that they could be acquainted with the Hindi or the Manipuri or the basic language in Churachandpur. So I totally agree with what Satyajit had, and in other audience had raised this question about this infiltration being issue that has plagued for maybe a couple of decades, but now it's just that the threshold has it has hit the threshold, and now we are facing the situation that we are facing today. I will next go to Arya. Arya, please make your question brief and also identify whom you are asking the question to. Arya, can you hear us? If not, then I'll go to Thaudam, who has raised his question, hands twice.
Oh yes, yes. Thank you, Nongdrin. So I first of all, I would like to start by saying a big thank you to Tamo Hemochandra, Ramiji, and I can see Vladimir Ji as well here, Blood and Iron. You guys have been quite instrumental in standing for the truth and standing for our community. Your effort has made us change the narrative that has been, the fake narrative that has been put forward. And I would like you to continue what you're doing. I understand that you all have been getting lots of abuse and threats online, but I would like you to know that we are there to support you with whatever you're doing, because I believe that the truth will prevail and we will come out stronger from this crisis. The next thing I want to point out is I briefly want to touch on Tamo Hemochandra's earlier reference to the issue that, not the issue, but the sort of memorandum that was submitted to Rishi Sunak in the UK. Yes, that's a fact. What was happening initially was that there has been a lot of false narrative that has been pushed forward, primarily by the Christian organizations here in this country, in the UK. A lot of them are of Indian origin as well as the churches of England. But over the last few weeks, the people here has been working really hard to get the truth out, the facts, and we are quite successful in that so far. People in this country, and a lot of them, has been able to understand the complexities of the crisis, and there has been a shift in the perception of what is causing these problems. Unfortunately, the initial narrative has been all about Hindus burning Christian churches, going after the minority Christians, and they have managed to get a lot of sympathy
Yeah.
from the religious people. They have never mentioned about the temples that have been burned.
Yeah,
They
Todam, can you come to your question, please?
Sure.
Because in the interest of
Sorry.
time, we would like
Yeah,
to
so they
one
have
more.
never mentioned about the cookies burning the Metis churches. They haven't mentioned about the ethnic cleansing of the Metis from Churchampur. 300 years of settlements of the Metis has been wiped out in 3 days. They never mentioned that. And we have been working day and night to change the narrative out here. And I can proudly say that this false narrative has been debunked, and we are, we have people who understands the truth of this matter, right? So that's something I wanted to point out in terms of what Tamo Hemochandra was mentioning earlier. Well, in terms of the BJP government, and a lot of the cookies are saying about presidential rule. It's like living in Manipur is like living under the BJP government, under Biren Singh government is like living in hell. Now, I mean, I've never been politically active, but I mean, if you look back at what Biren Singh has done, we have
Yeah.
had peace in Manipur. We never had one.
Todam,
For last 5 years, we had.
Todam, sorry to
Yep.
check if you can to the
Okay.
question.
Okay, I have lots of questions. Sorry, but I'll just restrict to one question for both Tamo Hemochandra and Ramiji. Now, I think I feel that we are in a stalemate at this point. Stalemate in the sense that we're not going closer to any solution. Now, to me, I feel if the Indian government is serious, they can solve this problem in days, not even weeks. We have the biggest army, one of the biggest army in the world. We have wiped out LTTE, and to go against these cookie militants is going to take a matter of days, and they are one of the root causes of this current problem. And the Indian government hasn't been doing anything so far against these militants. Now, how can we, as normal citizens, normal people, how can we help change our government approach to these militants so that we can move forward?
Yeah, you, Todam, that maybe Ramiji, you want to take that answer quickly? How, as civil society individuals, what role do we play? I know you did answer that question partly when you talk about the
Maybe we
role of.
can take one or
Yeah.
two questions together because
Maybe,
some of
yeah,
them are overlapping.
exactly. So, Arya, can you hear us now?
Okay, I'll just make it a little simpler because Arya went off too long. Became a little bit of a not so much of a question, but I think if Ramiji permits me, I'll just answer it in a
Please.
very brief way.
Yeah, very brief.
I think Arya, of
Yes.
course, I mean, with due regards to your sentiments, but it didn't come out as more of a question rather than a statement. It is very important if you would know that today, actually, incidentally, 18 June 2001, if you remember, and maybe you may have been very young at that time. 18 June, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji was the Prime Minister. It was a BJP-led NDA government also. 18 June, incidentally, is the day when we are also discussing this by the Twitter space today with Nongren, as the moderator. And can you imagine at that point of time, even that was it was a very, very deep crisis. And it happened under different circumstances. A lot of people were killed, and the assembly building was burnt. A lot of houses were burnt. But somehow, the violence was not allowed to, continue. But the Prime Minister met us. The Prime Minister then, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, if I remember correctly, he was in a wheelchair. He had had a knee surgery, but he heard us out, and there was a very prompt action. Mr. L.K. Advani was the deputy Prime Minister and also the Home Minister, and I think I'm completely with Arya. That it can be done if they are willing to do it. But that's a big question. What is happening? But please, once again, please, you are probably sitting in the UK, and I will request you to desist from making also sweeping statements on our government, because you have to have faith in it. Eventually, you have to have faith in our government. You cannot lose that hope. Once that hope is lost, then everything is lost. So maybe there was a delay in reaction time, and whatever time has passed, we are very unhappy about it. I have expressed it in very clear terms. But yes, even if it has been late, now it has to be some affirmative action has to take place, and the government has to take over. Some semblance of order has to be done, and we cannot give up on our government. We cannot give up on our government in Delhi or in Imphal or in Manipur. I'm not even bothered who's the CM, who's not, who remains, who doesn't remain. It doesn't matter. And why should we talk about Mr. Biren Singh also at this point of time? What is important is enforcement. Mr. Biren Singh has already not been given any powers now. In fact, all the powers are being taken by the central government. So again, I'm with Arya on the fact that it has to be done. The center has not done so much as it should have done. But at the same time, please don't lose faith in the government also. The government has to come in and do it.
Sure, Tamo. And just to clarify, it was Thaudam who asked this question, but in any case, you have answered that.
I'm sorry, I must have got mixed up with the name.
No worries. So we will take the last question. Pakhangba, you have a question. Please go ahead. Please be very brief and come to the question. Thank
Sure,
you.
thank you so much for the space. My name is Manjoy, but my handle is Bakangba. So my question is to Rami ma'am. I don't know, I'm too optimistic that peace is going to come back, right? So my question is, what is the first step the state government or the union government, should do for the 75,000 displaced, individuals? What kind of counseling sections, what kind of programs has to be done to bridge this trust between the two communities, especially for the younger generations? Because my sister is a teacher in a school, and she was asking me, Tamo, what should I tell my students, because they are from multiple communities, right? There is a fear in their mind, there is mistrust in their mind. So what kind of policies that the central government, state government should take, and the civil society and the civil bodies and academicians like you, ma'am, what will you advise to the government? That is my first question. And my second question is there a strategy plan for a midterm, for a short term and for a long term? Because violence is not going to end, right? And then we have seen this in the history. They have fought with multiple tribes. They have fought within their tribes. They have fought with the Nagas, with the Karbi. Now we are fighting. They're fighting with us. They will still continue, right? So the younger generations, what kind of messaging or what kind of governmental policies will help to bridge this, inter-community classes and inter-community loss of unity between the brothers and sisters? So thank you.
Thank you. That's interesting question, because this is something that I've just presented at one of the seminars that I attended. Because this is why I said somewhere earlier on also that eventually you do realize that children will have to sit in school together, irrespective of their communities. You do realize that there's going to be a trust deficit, that people will have to work together irrespective of, who they are. And this is going to be a long-term thing. I don't think after this situation anything's going to be short-term. Your first part of your question was about what should be done about people who are displaced. The emotional turmoil, the financial turmoil, the rehabilitation, all will have to be focused on simultaneously. But that sort of focus also can only come when there is some amount of normalcy that we have achieved. And that will be a great achievement. And I think in terms of resettlement, rehabilitation, uh, funding, so that they can restart their lives, and some sort of, intervention when it comes to the psychological impact of this conflict is going to be very necessary. So, it cannot be one thing or another. Number two, if I was to advise anybody, I don't think I'm in a position to advise anyone, but if I was to advise, people who could make a difference, I would say this, that we are in a precarious position. We all know that. It is difficult to have dialogue, and I've just seen Mr. Sharma comment, Vishwanath Sharma, that Rami must understand that peace is being held hostage. Rami understands that peace is being held hostage, but we have to also understand that there are limited options. Territorial, a compromise on our territorial integrity is not an option. This I've been clear of, every time I've spoken, but the option of whether there should be a peace or not is not an option. That is what we will have to achieve, to not just keep this region safe, but to keep this country safe. Now, yes, you might be dealing with some very obstinate people, but with the help of security forces, some sort of alleviation of that sort of obstinacy will have to come. We will have to come to that, and if I was to advise people on what their long-term positioning should be, or the government on what their long-term rehabilitation plans would be, it would be absolutely this, that infiltration has to stop. you know um, it's going to be very difficult, we understand that, but with the role of local governing bodies, with the role of local civil societies, with the role of our armed forces and determined focus to do that, I think much will be achieved, even if 100% is not achieved. I think this is a very, very, this is the genesis of the situation. I don't want to pull in other states, but let me remind everybody that even in a neighboring state, there were protests that took place against the Myanmarese government because local populations took objection to how these Chin militant groups were being treated in Myanmar. You know, this sort of interference, that comes in with infiltration spells disaster for us in the future. So, I would suggest that infiltration be stopped, people be marked, as many of these recent infiltrators who have entered these areas, should be put in refugee camps, should be sent back, but not be allowed to be a part of, Manipuri mainstream society. Because, like I said earlier on, we don't know who they are. Number two, I think we have to have goodwill commissions from both ends. As airy fairy, it may sound to people who are very upset about what's happening on the ground. I think strategy at this point is far more important than emotions. Emotionally, there's a lot of things that I want to go on ground and do. There are a lot of people I'd want to shake up and say, what are you demanding for? But is that going to give me a solution? No. The only thing that's going to give me a solution is a fine, nuanced strategy. And that is never easy to do. So I think there will have to be some amount of goodwill missions, and there will have to be some amount of intervention, which is multi-pronged. So it just can't be security, looking at the situation from a security spectrum. It just cannot be looking at the situation from a civil society spectrum. It just cannot be looking at this situation from an infiltration position. it is so complex that our mechanism has to be multi-pronged.
Yeah, thanks, Ramiji. Tamo, you wanted you want to add some your final thoughts, and then we can close for the day.
Yes, Nongran, I'd like to add one or two points. And of course, since we are almost concluding, I would put it on record that, this discourse today has been very positive, and I think we are on the right track. We've sort of discussed many issues, and probably I think I can see a light at the end of the tunnel, definitely, and that's the way forward. And adding to what Ramiji has said, and coming from the discussions, see, we have very far-reaching ramifications, and the losses which you can think of is colossal. Completely with Ramiji, this infiltration has to be stopped. The border fencing has to be revisited. It has to be done in a very, very serious way. Not just Manipur, the entire northeastern belt, the whole foreign policy considerations have to be revisited. The center has to now see. It will have a domino effect. This is not Manipur. It's going to happen to other states. This is one aspect which has to do with national security. The whole idea of India is being threatened. Let us not talk about just a clash in Manipur and all that, but this will have far-reaching repercussions. Narco terrorism, poppy plantations, drugs, heroin is an issue. Probably you never know. Look at Punjab, for instance. Maybe lots of issues. This is one aspect. Environmental issues that we have spoken about, and of course, this is the main point I want to focus, because this has been the point which I've been focusing in all my, at least in all my appeals so far, is the fact that we have to tackle it short term, long term. At the moment, the short term issue has to be tackled. Otherwise, we cannot go on to the next step. We cannot go to the long term step. First is dousing the flames. To reduce the temperature, and here I will completely go with Ramiji, that rehabilitation and this whole giving good shelter for schools for children. See, this is going to be a long haul. Let us not be very optimistic that something is going to happen within 15 days and people will start going back to Churachandpur, and Churachand people will come back to Imphal. This is not going to happen. It is going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of confidence building measure, which will take its own course. Civil society will definitely come back. See, dialogue, the democratic process, and as rightly put in, the elders of the society, respected people of the society, when temperatures cool down, we'll have to talk. And I'm 100% sure that the Kuki brothers, Meitei brothers, Naga brothers, all of us will probably, come to a table and we'll be able to speak. But as of now, as I speak and as we discuss this issue, that's not going to happen. So first, let's douse the flame. Dousing the flames will happen automatically when we have housing, when people, all these displaced people, both the cookies are also undergoing hell as much as the Meiteis. Look at the monsoons coming in. They are all split over Mizoram, Assam, all over. They're staying with their relatives all over in Delhi, Guwahati, whatnot. And same is the case with the Meiteis. They don't have homes to go to. Look at Kangbai, look at Sugnu, look at Sero. I mean, let us not talk about it. Thousands and thousands of people are displaced. So let's give them, I think, good, livable houses where, small townships can come up, self-contained units, drinking water. And I also appeal through your platform that let us not restrict it to just the government. Let us request the industry, big business houses. They can come to our rescue. They can build very at least livable houses, to sort of go through the monsoons. And then it is also a national problem. Can you talk about all these medical colleges, engineering colleges? NIT is a national, I think, examination now. People, boys and girls from Maharashtra have gone out. Boys and girls from Assam, not just neighboring Assam, but Rajasthan, Gujarat. It's a national problem. So we have lots of things in hand to do. It may look very simple. Every aspect of life, whether it is a man, woman, child, you know, everything is affected. So I think we, as responsible citizens, we all have a role to play, and I'm sure I think we are totally put at our, I think, nerves edges, and I think we can only hope, and I think we cannot lose hope. We have to keep on working on this. Thank you.
Can I just add one final
Yes,
thing?
yes, please go ahead.
I'd just like to say that irrespective of what we do and the rehabilitation that is given, and I understand this will be a long-term process. The fact of the matter remains, anybody who has been displaced needs to finally, and this goes in the responsibility of our state and our government, that they need to finally go back to their homes. Displaced doesn't mean you remain, where you have been displaced to. There cannot be further exoduses, which would only play into the hands of what these people have wanted, which is, certain amount of intimidation and demographic change. So I think any displacement that has happened in good time needs to be ensured that they get to go back to their homes. Rehabilitation camps cannot become their permanent camps.
Thanks,
I'm
Rami.
completely with you, ma'am, on that. I only said it because that is not a permanent solution. But as of now, if you look at the ground, I mean, this is going to take some time. But eventually, people have to go
Absolutely.
back. See, Ramiji, people have to go back. People have to go back to
No,
Churachandpur
this
and
was not
live
in
there.
this was not in response to you. I would assume that you would also think the same thing, but I think this needs to be put forward to our state apparatus that these are not permanent solutions.
Yeah. I'm completely with you on that.
I
Yes.
think, in fact, both of you said the same thing. But I
But
think we
differently.
are 8:45 now, and I had promised that we won't take much of your time. But thank you, Tamo, Hemo ji, and Rami ji for taking out this time. In fact, Rami ji, as some of the audience heard at the beginning, she landed only today morning, but she was kind enough to make time for this. And Tamo Hemochandra had other engagement in the evening, but he was also kind enough to accommodate this time. Really, thank you, and thank you to all the listeners who have logged in, and also the very pertinent questions that you have raised. Thank you from Meitei Heritage Society. We will continue with the similar Twitter space with other speakers. But thank you for logging in, and good night to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.